Dean Thomas joins me right now. Dean, welcome to the program.
Hey, man, it's good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure to have you on the brand new Octagram show here. It's nice to have you on it as well. I know you've been on my radio show and some of the other podcasts I've done, but this is kind of like you've hit the big time now, Dean.
Oh, really? Well, I am excited.
Man, I know you're a very busy man, especially with T. Woodley coming up here. That's going to be on Saturday, March 21st, UFC Fight Night 171. Tyron Woodley puts it all up against Leon Edwards. And Leon Edwards is nobody to sleep on, dude. I want to hear from you. You're right there with T. Wood along the whole fight camp. How's this matchup, and how are you guys looking at this matchup going into that Fight Night, March 21st?
You know, it's a dangerous fight because Leon Edwards is... everybody wants to fight tough guys, but you always kind of want to fight tough guys that everybody knows about, so that it's like a high-profile fight. And but Leon Edwards don't really have that name, so which is kind of good that we're fighting in his hometown because at least there's gonna be some buzz over there, hopefully. But Leon Edwards is such a terrific fighter, man. He's so well-rounded, he's so skilled and so crafty that it's a dangerous fight for Tyron. I looked at when I first started studying Leon Edwards, I was like, damn, he looks like a better version of me. So. Watching him fight, we came up with a game plan that I figured that I said, hey, Tyron, listen, these things would work against a guy like me, because like Leon Edwards reminded me of myself when I was coming up, just, very skilled and he relied on that. So like, we came up with a game plan to beat him. So, I'm really happy with what we came up with and what we have. And I expect to go out to London next week and I expect Tyron to put on the show.
When you say that Leon Edwards is a fighter like yourself, I kind of get the gist of it, but if you don't mind, can you kind of elaborate what you mean by that? It's sort of an interesting comment.
Well, if you look at his background, like when you look at him, you go, okay, he's a striker, but then you look how good he is on the ground, and then if you look at him on the ground, you go, man, this guy's really good on the ground, but he can strike. So it's almost like he doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. He doesn't have a lot of weak areas of where you could put him to beat him. So you have to really dissect him a little further and break him down a little further into micro levels of where he's going to be weakest. And again, like I said, because I came up from the beginning in the mid 90s doing, it wasn't even called MMA back then, and I came up doing that, so I didn't come from a specific background.
It was called illegal back then.
Yeah, it was called illegal.
Crime. You're committing crimes back then.
Right, so I came up doing everything, so I didn't have a specific background or a weakness per se. So, and I look at him the same way, like he doesn't have a specific weakness in terms of areas, but there are weaknesses that he does. So we had to really break that down and really kind of dissect him further than your normal guy.
Very interesting. Now, you're right, Leon doesn't really have that star power of that name necessarily, but that just rubs me, and I'm sure a lot of fight fans, kind of the wrong way, because the man's strung together like, maybe I might be off here by one or two, but about 12 straight wins. What do you think it is? Obviously the thing with Masvidal backstage, that's going to lower anybody's stock, and I kind of get that part of it. But with 12 wins, why aren't the fight fans kind of latching on to that like they did with with Khabib and with all these other fighters who are undefeated like that?
Well,
he's not undefeated, I'm sorry, but he does have 3 losses. But you know what I'm saying, stringing the fights together.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I think the thing with Masvidal raised his stock. When people go, "Who's Tyron fighting?" I go, "You remember the guy Masvidal punched backstage?" And that's how they remember him. They remember him more so from being the 3-piece in a soda guy. But I think that the reason why he hasn't really popped off is because, like, if you look at his wins, he doesn't fully dominate guys. Like, if you look at his fight against, like, Vincent Luque, like, he lost a round in that fight. If you look at his fight against, Trumanov, he lost a round. So, like, some of his rounds, he doesn't fully dominate, but he gets the job done. He's very to watch. So I think that hurts him.
I totally understand what you're saying, and like I said, does that rub you the wrong way? Now I get, like, Tyron is your guy. You guys go way back. He's your horse in the race, so to speak. But as someone like you that's come up from the very beginning of MMA and all that, does it kind of rub you the wrong way that Leon or somebody like Leon can have so many wins and it just doesn't speak loud enough for him, that he has to do more than that? Or do you actually, are you okay with the business and industry sort of pivoting that direction where you kind of have to have that cherry on top?
No, I'm okay with that. I think that everybody gets what they deserve, and in the current climate of MMA now, you gotta have a little something more. I'm in the entertainment industry. Like when I'm not doing MMA stuff, I'm trying to act, and I do understand that, like, as an actor or an entertainer, you have to be entertaining. It's all about eyeballs and people wanting to see you and having that it factor. If you don't have that it factor, you're not a leading man. And the problem with Leon Edwards is he's good enough to be a leading man, but he just hasn't really been able to establish himself having that hit factor.
I understand. But as we've seen in the UFC, and as we've seen with George Masvidal, a man from your team at American Top Team, Coconut Creek, as we've seen, it's never too late for Leon Edwards to make a statement and for things to happen for him. I mean, that's got to raise true as well, right?
Yeah, it's never going to be too late. Masvidal was the same way for years. For over a decade, Masvidal was that guy who was kind of always in cruise control, always. But for me, he was the same guy. Like, looking at him in the gym, the way he is today is the way he was 10 years ago. He's the same guy. But in fights, he would be on cruise control. But it wasn't until the flying knee that it was like, this guy's got something special. The flying knee that is knocked out of Darren Till. And then prior to that, knocking or hitting, and then after that, punching Leon Edwards backstage. And then just, some of his quotes and his one-liners have just been magnificent. So it's never too late to really show that you are a star.
And I think what I take away from what you just said is momentum. I think it's not just the one win or just the knee, the 3-second win over Askren, not just the Leon Edwards backstage, but that kind of stringing the momentum together. And you can't really plan those things either necessarily. And when you do try to plan them, they're not going to go your way. So it's a little bit of luck involved and a little bit of kind of making sure that if you have some momentum, and if you can maybe take it from here, what your thoughts on it, if you have some momentum, the key is to sort of parlay that momentum into more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this game is so much about luck, being in the right place at the right time, being prepared, not saying no to certain opportunities. Certain opportunities that I have in my career, like you say, I have a fighter's great post-fight career. It's because I didn't say no, and I was prepared for the moment. And that's what it is. As a fighter, you have to learn how to do that. Like, every time you say no to a fight, that might have been the one fight that got you over the top. So you have to be prepared. Like, I always tell fighters, like, for the next 5 to 10 years, you have to really commit, dedicate yourself to your career and your craft, be prepared for everything and anything. Just get out there and do it.
Fair enough. I'm not sure if it's going to make air or not, because I might have said it before we were rolling, but we'll switch gears. And indeed, I did say that Dean Thomas, you do have, I guess you could say in your own right, the dream post-UFC fight career. I did say that earlier. I think it might have been before we were rolling, so I want to put some context to that. So let's talk about that. I mean, do you? I've seen your IMDb today. Okay, I've seen it more than once.
Okay.
I'm always checking up to see if you got new projects going. But what I noticed the most is your serious headshot. Like, that's not a headshot from you scrolling through your phone and I'll use that photo. No, that is a professional headshot that you are going to hand to people who are casting. So I feel like you take it a little more serious than some people might know. What are your plans for acting if it was to go your way? What do you want to do in that realm?
Well, I'm still hustling. I'll try to take the enthusiasm that I had towards fighting and I put it into my acting career. The thing about acting is it's no different than fighting. It's a skill, it's a craft. And I think the biggest mistake that a lot of people make is that they think that they could just, if you have a good memory and you can remember lines, so you can just go out and be an actor, or if you're comfortable in front of a camera, you can just be an actor. And yes, you have to have those things. But at the end of the day, I had an acting coach tell me, you don't get paid for your memory, you get paid for making good choices. So for me, I study acting. I'm in class every Sunday night, so I study acting. I prepare myself.
That's cool. Where do you go? If you could share, what kind of class? Just a regular acting class, or?
Yeah, I go to a regular acting class in West Palm Beach. So I mean, it's nothing. I mean, it's a weekly class. So I'm in every week working on like monologues and and I've done stage productions and theater. So again, like, I'm treating myself as if I was like an amateur fighter, and showing up to practice, doing what I got to do, taking the fights taking the whack fights. So I do anything, and I do a lot of improv. I perform improv, at least once a month. So I'm doing it all.
Let me ask you, what would be a two-part question here? A dream project, or getting cast into a dream project with one individual. They can be alive, or they could be not with us anymore. But also more in the serious realm. You're the first one, like Al Pacino's and De Niro's and those guys. But then second, who's your second dream buddy for like a buddy comedy? So who's your serious actor dream cast job? I'm not sure if that came out correctly. And then your buddy comedy. Like who are the two actors you'd love to do those with?
So here it goes. Like if I had to do like a serious thing, like I would Denzel Washington. I would do something with Denzel Washington. Either Denzel Washington or Johnny Depp. I would do something with them. And this might sound weird, but if I had to do like a buddy comedy thing, it would actually be with Matt Serra.
I wasn't expecting that, but
yeah.
But I've seen Dana White looking for a fight enough to know that it'd probably work. And
yeah, I would 100%. You could put anybody in front of you. You could be like, hey, do it with Kevin Hart. Hey, do it with. I'd be like, nope, give me Matt Serra.
Have you ever tried any stand-up comedy?
Well, yeah, I have. The first time I did it, we actually did it on Dana White Looking for a Fight. And then after that, I had done it maybe another dozen times, just practicing, just doing stand-up.
Are you guys filming any more episodes for another season coming up or anything?
Yeah, right now they have a couple that they're planning, but nothing concrete yet.
And Dana's got that concrete deal. His show can't get canceled until he's bored of it anymore. That's that contract, that ironclad contract.
Well, the problem is Dana White is like the most important man. Well, he's easily the most important man in MMA and one of the most important men in the country. So he's very busy. So it's hard for him to like take 3 days off so he can just play with me and Matt. It's kind of like a frivolous activity that he does.
It's almost like his recreational. Like he's probably marrying like a vacation time or a recreational time with filming that show.
I think so. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, too. It's definitely something that you guys should keep on going as long as possible. I'd be remiss if we didn't chat for a minute or two about UFC 248. American Top Team Coconut Creek had a huge night that night. Didn't go exactly, as planned for Joanna Jędrzejczyk and as well for Yoel Romero. But if we can, we'll start with what could be a contender for Fight of the Year with Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Zhang Weili out of China. Zhang Weili retains her strawweight title, but man, it was razor sharp close. I mean, it couldn't have been closer, and it could not have been a better, more spectacular fight that should have probably just been a headliner of a numbered UFC event. Your take on that fight, Joanna and Weili Zhang?
Well, honestly, and this might sound bad, but I thought Joanna did so much better than I expected from her. Now, people always say, how's Joanna looking? How's she looking? I go, man, listen, Joanna is a champ, and she's a professional. She's a consummate professional. She comes in the gym every day. She comes in, does her work like it's her job. Like, she doesn't stop and talk and clown around and goof off. She comes in like it's her job, so she's always going to show up and fight to the best of her ability. Now, when I say I thought she did better than I expected, is only because, like, she took the punches that she needed to in order to stay in that fight.
So she ate some to be able to give some. She ate a lot, quite a bit actually.
And I knew that she would get hit, but I didn't think that she'd be able to take them as well as she did. I mean, she took those shots and smiled at Zhang. So I was extremely impressed and happy with her for doing that. Now, with that being said, prior to them fighting, I also said that Joanna might give Zhang problems because of her length. If she utilizes her length properly and her jab properly, she was going to give Zhang problems. And she did, using that jab and them leg kicks.
Mm-hmm. What was the biggest difference maker that you'd say that gave Zhang the edge?
Bias. Champion bias.
Oh, and that was, the judging, not the actual fight. You believe the judging was off?
Because like if you look at the actual fight, maybe Joanna took a few more punches, or she might have ate a few more right hands, but I think more than anything, it was actual champion bias, and we always have this. And I hate to say it, but we have this like idea that in order to beat the champ, to take it from. You gotta like take it from them. You gotta like overwhelm them, and that's not true. I think that the rules are the same. The judging criteria is the same whether you're champion or not. And I think that Zhang got a little bit of help from that idea that you have to take it from the champ.
I couldn't agree more, and it's a tough notion that somehow has been in play at the UFC for maybe a couple or a few years now. I'm not sure when the first time it happened. It might have been a John Jones fight where they didn't do enough to beat the champion or something along those lines. But it seems to be somewhat of a theme now. And you're right. It's a 10-9, 10-8, 10-7. Scoring round by round, and sometimes what it seems like is they're scoring round by round, and that fifth round comes along, and all of a sudden they start to take the big picture into account, which that's not how it's supposed to be. It's just supposed to be, I've attended UFC events, I've attended all levels of events in MMA, and what happens is the judges are supposed to write. Stop me if I'm wrong here, but they write their scores out, and at the end of each round, don't they hand those scores in?
I don't think they hand them at the end of each round. They hand them in. They're supposed to write them in.
See, that's a problem. They should hand them in at the end of each round.
Absolutely. And this is something that I've been screaming. I've been screaming this for years. Not only should they hand them in, I think it should be digital and everybody should see it.
Did you see the Invicta? They tested that out on Invicta. Did you see what it looked like?
I didn't see what it looked like, but I do.
Let me give you a quick brief. I'll give you a quick 10-second brief. Basically, at the end of each round, the fighter sits on their bench just like this, their stool, and they're facing the center of the cage. And behind them is somebody standing with a digital iPad, and it shows the scores on there, and it's behind them. So it's up to the corner who's looking that way if they want to tell the fighter the score or not, because the corner's looking behind them, and so it's someone standing behind them with the digital score showing the corner. And it's kind of up to them if they want to let the fighter know or not. Most people thought it was good. The open scoring was good. But like a basketball game, why isn't the score up on the big screen? I mean, I'm not trying to push it too far, but
it's the way it should be. I mean, this is 2020, and there's still these guys are writing it in like with the little pencils that you use for mini golf. That's what they're writing their scores with, like. Let's use a digital, press a button, and then boom, it's calculated and immediately goes up onto a big screen so that everybody can see it.
And they can't change it after. And the worst thing is we see scorecards with people scratching scores off and changing them.
Yeah, scratching scores off. I mean, it's ridiculous. I think the way MMA is scored is ridiculous.
Absolutely. I mean, good on Invicta for at least showing what it would look like and giving people at the UFC and giving different commissions at least a look, so I give them some props for at least trying it out, and it actually looks like it works. It's digital, and at the end of the day, if it's open like that and those scores are on screen so the viewers see it, there's so much less room for that BS that we're talking about, because it
is less room.
Yeah, you can't really pull that off if you're showing us it showing the score round by round. You can't really pull off the fifth round scribble.
Yeah, you can't do that. Then also too, I think it holds the judges more accountable for paying attention to the fight and knowing what the hell they're talking about, because sometimes you look at these scores and you go, what in the world was he thinking? What was he watching? So yeah, I think that not only it's more fair to the fighters to know where they're at in the fight, but I think it also holds the judges more accountable for paying attention and actually doing their job right of putting the right score up.
Yeah, and I don't mean to look back too much now with T. Wood having something important in front of him March 21st. T. Woodley goes up against Leon Edwards. That's Fight Night 171, UFC on ESPN. So I don't want to look back too much, but let's just say Tyron was able to see the scores during the Usman fight, Kamaru Usman title defense. Maybe round 2 or 3, that could also change a person psychologically. When they're like, man, I'm down 2 rounds and this is my belt. This is my food. And it could easily change something, maybe more than a coach can with his, words of wisdom, because you're actually looking and you're looking at your money slip away.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what happens with a lot of fighters. Like, a lot of fighters don't really know where they're at in a fight. They're just out there fighting, trying to stay in the moment. So like, and sometimes they're biased towards themselves, or sometimes they're harder on themselves than they need to be. So the fact that like they don't really know, like you might be in a fight and thinking you're winning, but you're losing, or you might be thinking you're losing, but you're actually winning. They should be able to know. They should be able to look up and go, "Hey, I'm winning, so this is what I need to do," or "I'm losing, so I need to catch up. I need a knockout here because I know that I'm losing."
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, I'm not trying to say what ifs or anything like that, but you never know. I mean, I don't want to go that direction. Forget about it. But you understand what I'm saying with Tyron. We would have loved to have seen him, turn that switch in the third round and really turn things around. He could have thought he was ahead for all we know. You're the champion. You feel good, whatever the case. You just never know what's going through the fighter's head. I'm sure you understand that, being a fighter yourself, a former UFC fighter. There's so much going on, and staying in the moment, like you said, is difficult enough as it is for a fighter to stay in the moment and not to have to think about that. Yeah. We could talk about this for hours, but definitely on the same page. And I don't think there are too many people who disagree with us. Now, secondly, with UFC 248, Yoel Romero had his opportunity to challenge Israel Adesanya for his middleweight championship at UFC 248. Now, I'm not on board with the notion of people saying that was Yoel's last opportunity to get the belt. I don't agree with that notion because I don't like those definitive, just a definitive statement like that. He didn't have the greatest, and excuse me here, this is probably as far as I'll ever go with critiquing, but he did not have the greatest performance that night. But that does not mean that he's out of the running. I don't like that people say that. What do you think when you hear people say that before the fight even happened? I mean, we're talking fight week. People are, the media, asking Yoel questions. This is your last opportunity. Who said it's his last opportunity? I mean, who says he's not going to knock out 2 top 5 guys in the next year and get the same opportunity? What are your thoughts on that concept?
Yeah, I think that's silly. What it comes down to is that the fight was terrible, and not a lot of people like this, so they kind of have to blame somebody and throw somebody under the bus. And why not blame a 42-year-old who's probably going to be gone within the next couple of years anyway? Israel Adesanya, he's going to be around for another 10 years probably. So like you don't want him to be hated right now. So you don't want to put the blame on him. It's easier to just put the blame on Yoel Romero because, hey, listen. He's 42 years old. You might as well blame somebody. Blame the 42-year-old who, is probably going to retire within the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But like we said, they're always looking to, at this point, I feel like the UFC might, kind of pivot a little bit with how they utilize Yoel Romero when they're booking his next fight. After that, they might start to treat him as somebody who they're going to, as they say, feed, to the younger up and coming guys. But 1 or 2 of those quick knockouts for those young and up and coming, naive guys that don't realize what they're going up against, and Yoel's right back there. You just never know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a silly concept to say that he's out of the race. I mean, like you said, if he just knocks a bunch of dudes out, of course they're going to put him back in there. I mean, he'd be deserving of it. The only thing they can do is not give him the opportunity to do that and just have him fight like guys that maybe are, that stylistically won't allow him to do that, or not ranked high enough for him to look great, against unranked guys. But I doubt that's going to be the case. But listen, I need to tell you something.
Please do.
We need to stop this whole thing about going, I don't want to criticize these fighters.
Okay.
And I see a lot of media guys do this. I don't want to criticize them because I respect everybody who gets in the cage. Just because you get in the cage doesn't mean that you can't be criticized. I mean, you get in there, you accept the praise. You should be able to be criticized. And I think a lot of media members are afraid to criticize fighters because they want to respect them. But listen, they get in the cage to fight. If they have a terrible fight, they need to be told about it. You can't hide the fact that they're terrible. Like I criticize fighters all the time. I criticized the man in Newlands in her last fight, and I love her to death. I work with her, but I thought the last fight wasn't that great. I thought her time and how.
Sorry, Dean, we're losing you there a little bit. I can see you perfectly, but I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfectly. Go ahead, pick up. Who was the fighter you were talking about that you weren't really happy with the ground and pound that you just were talking about?
Amanda Nunes against Jermaine Duran.
Okay.
And I love her to death. She's one of my favorite fighters, but at that moment she wasn't 100% there. So, but the thing is, like, we have this idea because fighters are so sensitive, they take everything so personally that we feel like we can't criticize them. And media members, more than anybody, seem to be afraid to do that. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dean, what was that?
I was saying that media members seem afraid to criticize fighters because fighters are so sensitive.
Well, I'll just give you my own personal take, and I totally understand what you're saying. I'm not necessarily mimicking what other media members say. I'm not here to talk about myself most of the time. This is 99.9% about my guests, but I did wrestle for 9 years. I was in karate for 7 years. I never competed, but I trained boxing for 2 years. Like, I've always been involved in combat sports, but nobody knows that. So sometimes I just kind of have to take the right road. Not the right road, sorry. I sometimes just want to take that road because not everybody knows that. And I'm not going to sit here and explain my background and try to act like I'm, well, I can talk about it because I'm this. I kind of just try to stick to my lane, and I totally get that. Plus, we're talking about Yoel Romero, and I look like a snack to him. I ain't trying to get my ass beat.
I get it. Listen, I get it. Fighters are sensitive, and they might run up on you. But eventually we need to get to the point
especially
where
Brian Ortega running up on little Asian singers.
Yeah, Jay Park. But we need to get over that. These guys got to get over that.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, look, I'm not trying to play it safe. I just kind of know my lane. If I was an active fighter, or if I was actively, training or a coach, I'd probably hit on that a little bit more. But at the end of the day, one of my goals in this show is to pick your brain as much as possible and to get your critiques and to get, because you, at the end of the day, as much experience as I might have, yours is 100-fold compared to it. So I always try to respect that. I always try to defer, I'll try to defer to someone like you. So that's just my personal approach. I'm not in any way mimicking what other media members do, because if I was mimicking what they did, I'm not making any friends with this statement, I would suck, because only they can suck. I can't suck that much, Dean. Like, I have to kind of just do me. I'm never gonna mimic them, man. I've seen some of the wackest stuff happen with MMA Media. That's why I'm building my own stuff, and probably not gonna gain a bunch of friends in media room with that statement. But at the end of the day, I do have my own style, yeah. But I get what you're saying, man. Okay, look, I'll do this for you then. Romero sucked on Saturday. No, I'm just kidding. no.
Listen, I can appreciate you.
Thank you, and I can appreciate you kind of giving that sort of that voucher, like, hey, look, you need to kind of step that up, and I can understand that, and hey, I might look at it differently, moving forward after I hear someone like you say something like that. Dean Thomas, it's always a pleasure, but before I let you go, any final words you can leave the fight fans with for Tyron Woodley's fight coming up? I know you were probably with him today. You said you had to get him in the sauna earlier today, just about an hour ago. Anything you can give us as far as the fight camp goes leading up to his fight with Leon Edwards on March 21st?
Now, I'll say this, I've been with Tyron for 10 years, over 10 years now. Wow, it's been about 13 years now. And I know what he looks like in camp when he's not prepared to fight, and I know what he looks like in camp when he's serious about winning. And right now, he's very serious about winning. When he fought Kamaru Usman, I would say that, he wasn't. But in this fight camp, he's very serious about winning. He's very serious about going over there to London and making a statement. So tune in, expect the Tyron Woodley of old, the one that we all saw knock out Jay Haran and Koscheck and Condit. That's the man we're going to see on March 21st.
Beautiful. Looking forward to it. American Top Teams, Coconut Creek. His name is Dean Thomas. Dean, I don't have it in front of me. Can you go ahead and plug your social media for us?
Oh, it's all the same, everybody. It's Dean Thomas, D-I-N Thomas, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook sometimes. But yeah, just find me on Instagram, Twitter, at Dean Thomas, D-I-N Thomas.
All right, and Denzel Washington, you heard it, my brother. My man wants to
Denzel and Sarah. We got a movie coming out.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to it. Dean Thomas, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. See you soon.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Hit that subscribe button down there. And when you're done with that, go on over to Instagram and Twitter and follow us at The Octagram and on Facebook.com/TheOctagramMMA.